can be really isolating and people can really crawl into themselves. So just having somebody say, we believe that this happened to you and there's help for you can be very powerful. It's one of the best things you could do. If somebody discloses to you that they've been a victim of either sexual assault or domestic violence, just saying, I believe you, can really go far to somebody then opening up and reaching out and seeking help.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Hi, I'm Jeff Holden, Principal of Multipoint Content Strategies and Hear Me Now Studio. We provide this forum pro bono to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. October is Domestic Violence Action Month, and my guest today represents one of the most respected agencies serving those in need of support. Beth Hassett, CEO and Executive Director of Weave Incorporated, is a powerful community advocate and leader. She's led the charge to promote safe and healthy relationships and has supported survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and sex trafficking since 2006. Under her direction, the organization she leads has grown to an $11 million agency offering a robust array of comprehensive services including emergency and transitional housing, legal assistance, advocacy, therapeutic counseling, and prevention education. She's committed to ensuring that their programs are accessible, respectful, and culturally responsive so clients from all communities can heal and rebuild their lives. She's received numerous awards, including 2 from the Sacramento Business Journal, the Corporate Citizenship Award as Nonprofit Executive of the Year, and one of Sacramento's most admired CEOs. An active community volunteer, she's vice chair of the Sacramento First 5 Commission and a member of the Board of Directors for Midtown Association and McKinley Village Homeowners Association. She's a frequent local, regional, and national presenter on the topics of fundraising, marketing, nonprofit management, and violence prevention and intervention. I'm proud to call her a friend. Beth, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here on the Nonprofit Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, it's easy to take what we've known for so long and for granted when we're in the community, but I'm sure there are many people who will listen to the episode and really not know what the origin of Weave is or was. First and foremost, the name is an acronym. Can you share that with us a little bit?
We were founded in 1978 as Women Escaping a Violent Environment, and we stopped using that acronym years ago, but it persisted. People continued to refer to it, and we debated whether we were going to bother changing it, to what end. And then about 5 years ago, we really were seeing it as a barrier for people seeking services because not everyone's a woman and not everyone's escaping. And so we flipped it. Years ago, we had a contest to see what else Weave could stand for. And a 10-year-old boy came up with, when everyone acts, violence ends.
Wow.
So it's not really an acronym. We use it as a tagline now, but our legal name is Weave. So we're trying to put that women escaping business behind us.
And leave it to youth, of course, to come up with a solution, right?
I wish I could find that kid.
Yeah, I know. And as women are a part of the solution that Weave provides, who else do you serve now?
We've always served a lot of children and youth, especially in our prevention programs, because we're trying to stop the violence before it starts. And we serve a lot of men and non-binary people, and violence, unfortunately, happens to everybody.
So gender identity aside, it's anybody, any race, any gender, however you identify, they're capable of using the services that Weave provides.
Absolutely. And people who have the most barriers to getting help often need the help the most. So,
right.
We look at racism and sexism and all of those isms as extra barriers to getting help.
You offer a lot of services. Can you walk through the primary services and then maybe focus a little bit on the highest priority services that Weave provides?
And we always try to keep our core services solid because we've got lots of additional programs, grants come and go, opportunities come and go. But our core services are housing, our emergency shelter and transitional housing, legal services so that people can take legal means to be safe, like a restraining order, rather than needing to come to a shelter. Counseling, we've got a lot of people contemplating leaving an abusive relationship or trying to heal after sexual assault or domestic violence. And then we're the Rape Crisis Center for the county, so we're providing all of those wraparound services in the aftermath of somebody getting sexually assaulted. And Weave's mission is to promote safe and healthy relationships and provide supportive services for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking. So the two halves of what we do are trying to prevent domestic violence and sexual assault, and then also to support people who find themselves to be victims.
Are there any of the programs, because I know you've got a phone line, a phone hotline, you also have a safe house. Do you see any one of them in more demand than others, or you can only accommodate so much, I would imagine?
Our most used service is our support and information line, and that's how people get to us. But they're getting to us to get other services. So we see always demand for legal services and counseling and our safe house. I mean, we just don't have enough people to serve all the people that need us. And so, you know, we do our best, but there just isn't enough funding and not enough people at Weave to provide those services. So there's a waiting list for counseling always, and our safe house is always full. And so we're always looking for other strategies people can take to stay safe in the meantime while they're waiting for services.
Sadly and remarkably, thank God you're there. And unfortunately, you can't service everybody, which is understandable.
We can't. And with the housing crisis right now, more and more people just have nowhere to go. You know, they come and they stay with us for 6 months in emergency shelter, and then there's nowhere for them to go. They can't afford to go anywhere else. So we really are seeing a backlog of where do those people go so that new people can come in?
You know, and that's a great question. In terms of what you saw pre-pandemic to what you see today, is there a number you could put to it, a percentage of change in terms of needs to be serviced?
Well, I can tell you when it comes to housing, pre-pandemic, the average stay was always like 90 days. Okay. People would come for 90 days. We'd stabilize them. We'd help them figure out where they were going to go next, and then we'd help them find a place to go. People are staying the full 6 months now.
Oh, wow.
And to me, that's the biggest indicator because that just shows me people have nowhere to go, and we have nowhere to place them.
Boy, that's frustrating. And do they come with their children in some cases?
Our average client has 2.5 kids with them. So yes, they are coming with a lot of children often.
Wow.
And housing's a barrier to leave. So we worry about the people who don't leave because they don't have an income. They're dependent on their abusive partner. They're worried that they won't have anywhere to live. So they stay in very dangerous relationships. And we really saw that happening during the pandemic. You know, people, first of all, couldn't leave during the height of it. And things got really escalated in some of these relationships where people were trapped in a house with somebody who's being abusive. And, you know, people's tensions were at an all-time high. And once the pandemic was over, we were flooded with requests for services, especially in our legal department, because people wanted restraining orders. They wanted help with dissolution of their marriage, child custody, all of those family law things. So, yeah, 4 times as many people call our legal line than used to.
That makes sense. You got forced into a situation where not only did you, prior to pandemic, have a bad situation, but you were living with somebody what percentage of time, and all of a sudden the pandemic hits, now you're living with them full-time, maybe 24/7.
Well, the interesting thing that came out of it, I think, for the community is I think people have a real visceral understanding of what it would be like to be trapped with somebody and to not have any place to go. I think a lot of times people don't really get that. They're like, well, why don't they just leave? Well, there are so many barriers to leaving. And I've just heard from donors and other people in our community, they're like, you know, I like my partner and I was stuck with them in a house for a while. And so I think people really understand what that must feel like when somebody's in a dangerous or abusive relationship.
Right. And can only lead to more substance abuse, which I'm sure is prevalent in every situation that's as dramatically bad as it can be.
Well, those are all the things that exacerbate it.
Right.
Financial woes, mental health issues, substance misuse. All of those things make an already bad relationship much worse.
Right. With all that you have coming through the organization, I would imagine you have collaborative relationships with a lot of different organizations in the community as well. Can you speak to that a little bit? Police and other shelters, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's interesting because the way we view it is we've got these core services. We've got these things that we know keep people safe, that we know people need. And then our goal is to have all of these doorways for people to get to us. And oftentimes that's through trusted partners in the community or people that they're just going to be interacting with because of the nature of the crime. So we're embedded in 4 different law enforcement agencies because we're able to follow up right away when there's been either a sexual assault or a domestic violence incident and immediately offer services to those victims who might not have found us otherwise.
And is that by referral from the agency, whoever that particular agency is?
We actually have an advocate that pulls up the reports from the day before and reaches out to the victims. Sometimes we'll actually go to the site if it's safe and talk to the victim. We also work with a lot of culturally specific organizations and family resource centers, places where people are going anyway to get other services. And while they're doing so, it might come out that they've got a domestic violence incident going on or they were a victim of sexual assault. And then those trusted partners can do a warm handoff to us because, it's scary to reach out for help. And sometimes people don't feel like what they're going through counts as domestic violence. If there's not a lot of physical abuse, for instance, there's more mental or financial abuse. So having those eyes and ears out there that are already in the community and already serving those people has really dramatically increased the number of people reaching out for help and just also ensuring that we're getting to every corner, nook and cranny of this community.
Which has to be a monumental task.
It is. This is such a diverse community. So having people who can speak the language, having enough staff that look like the clients that are coming through our doors is an ongoing challenge in recruiting and retaining staff that can really meet people where they are and encourage them to open up and take advantage of all the services.
So if somebody's in a crisis situation that does need intervention, but they're really afraid to go to the police or to any of the authorities for fear of escalating the situation as it is, how would they know you exist? Is there any way, or is there outreach to the population at large, or for the maybe disadvantaged communities where you see more of the challenges and issues?
We really depend on other social service agencies, hospitals, all of those folks, and some of these culturally specific smaller organizations in neighborhoods to really be the ones saying, look, we know you're afraid of CPS. You're afraid they're going to take your kids away.
Right.
You may not want to engage in the criminal legal system. We get that you don't want to call law enforcement. Weave isn't law enforcement, and Weave isn't going to make you do that. And a lot of what we're doing is helping them assess their safety. The best thing for them might be to stay where they are and plan to leave at a later date. It might be to not exacerbate things right now. We would never tell somebody to leave, and leaving's a big process. So we're just trying to help people get through whatever they're going through and keep themselves and their kids safe.
Yeah, and support them as they go through the process of whatever that step-by-step situation looks like for their individual case.
Exactly.
And I'm sure no two are alike.
No two are alike. No.
What you're doing is a significantly expensive proposition. And I know you're an $11 million plus organization. Where do you see the majority of funding come from, and how do you support that sort of a budget?
We raise funds from the community, so thank goodness for generous donors out there.
Right.
We also have 3 thrift stores, so we generate revenue from people donating the goods and then other people buying the goods, and we also give a lot of that stuff away to our clients, which is nice. But the majority is from a whole array of grants, government grants, corporate grants, federal, state, city grants.
Okay.
And, it's really a braided patchwork of funding that funds all of our work. And some of it's really expensive. Housing is expensive.
As I would expect, yeah.
It's expensive to house people. So luckily, a lot of donors want to give to housing, so that's nice. And then we get special grants just to try new projects and pilot things. A lot of grant funding to go into the schools and work with youth. And again, try to stop this problem before it starts.
Oh, wonderful. So you actually do community outreach into those schools and or the healthcare system or whatever so that it's preventative or at least easily identified before it gets to be an escalated situation.
Yeah, we're working in the K through 12 schools, starting in kindergarten, talking about body autonomy and consent and leading up to actually talking about sexual assault and domestic violence and dating violence by the time we get to middle school, but really making sure kids are getting that continuum through their entire education so it builds on itself and hopefully they come out the other end not being a victim or a perpetrator of violence. That's the goal.
One, I noticed on the website, not only did you have an incredibly detailed timeline of how things came to play, which is almost a statement of how society has changed just following your timeline to who you service, how you service, and what services you provide. And then I also saw that there's a 14s segment on there, which it just pains me to think that kids, preteen and teen are in these situations. And as I look through it, it's like, oh my gosh, I can only imagine what that would have looked like in high school for me, 30, 40 years ago.
Well, and the challenging thing with the youth is that a lot of them don't have positive relationships being modeled for them.
Yes.
We do an exercise where we ask them to think about in the media, what are examples of a positive relationship versus a negative relationship. Oh, they can list all the negative relationships that you can think of. But even if you look too closely at things like Disney movies, it's like, is it great that, she traded her voice to be able to walk? I don't know. Is she changing for the guy? So, we really look at, what those relationships look like and what a healthy relationship should feel like.
I think that's a wonderful project, program, however you categorize it, because if we can solve the issues or at least bring them to light and have the awareness from youth, they recognize something's not right here. Mom, don't do that, or Dad, don't do that, to the extent that they can.
Well, and we're really involving men and boys in our work more than we ever have before because, first of all, there are a lot of great men out there that we need to lift up as role models who are good guys, and we need the boys to pay attention. I mean, we're not going to stop this. And yes, anybody can be a perpetrator of violence, but it is by and large a very gendered crime. So
frustrating as we hear about the sex trafficking, and now we've got a law pending there. It's about to or not about to pass, but we just look at all the things that seem like they're such common sense, but they're not, and they're not easy to either push through, and or even get recognition and acknowledged.
Well, and there are a lot of laws that people are well-meaning, and then they have unintended consequences. There are a lot of laws that we're just not actually implementing them, like if you're a prohibited person who isn't supposed to have a gun, somebody's supposed to take that gun away from you if you get a restraining order against you. Right. And there are things like that that can really keep victims safer. And, but law enforcement says they don't have the person power to go take those guns away. And so we end up with fatalities. And that's ultimately
the
what
worst.
We're trying to avoid.
Right. Does Weave get involved in any lobbying at all?
We have a pro bono lobbying firm, and we have a government affairs committee of our board of directors. We do education to elected officials, and sometimes we will endorse or be part of some legislation. But we're always looking at how could we shore things up to make things safer for victims? How can we make it safer for the children? And how can we make it easier to get help?
Is there a number, if you were just to put a number of people you serve in a given year, how many people do you touch?
We take about 14,000 calls on our support line. We counsel 3,000 people. Housing, we used to house a lot more people when they only stayed for a month or
90
so.
days, right.
So, now we're in the hundreds of people being actually housed. We get 400 calls a month for our legal line. So those are people who, we're helping with restraining orders. Sometimes we're just giving them a consult and, telling them what their options are. But yeah, thousands of people that come through our doors or call us on the phone for advice.
That's amazing. As a result of that sort of demand, what does the staffing look like? How many people are employees versus volunteers? Kind of what percentage maybe?
We have about 150 employees. Some of them are on call or very part-time. We have volunteers that work on our support line, but honestly, during COVID, we weren't doing our trainings. Everybody has to go through an almost 70-hour training in order to work with clients, which affords them confidential privilege so that they can't be hauled into court to talk negatively about our clients.
And is that self-imposed or is that legally imposed?
It's state statute.
Okay.
So it's what protects victims and their confidential information. So we stopped doing a lot of our volunteer trainings during COVID because you just can't do that via Zoom. So we just now had another in-person training and have started building up our volunteer pool. But volunteers do things like work in our stores, answer our support line. Some of them are sexual assault responders who go to the hospital when somebody's been sexually assaulted and sit with them.
So they're escorted. Wonderful.
Yeah. And that also is a right that victims have. So we use a lot of people who, they're not volunteers, they're paid, but they're basically, they're only paid if they actually go to the hospital. And that's a great group of caring people, and we have to have multiple people on call at all times because we have to respond immediately.
Well, I have the utmost of appreciation for people who can do that because it's not easy.
It is not easy work, no.
Right. So as you look at the organization today, and you've been there to see a lot of its transition and change. You've been there since, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4 years since it started?
I've been there since 1995 because
I'm
not that old.
Okay, it started in 78. But wait, if I'm not mistaken, we're recording this in August, and somebody had a milestone birthday just recently.
Yes.
So happy birthday.
Thank you. I was in junior high when Weave was founded.
That's right,
but I've been there since 1995.
Okay, and 78 was the start.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of changes. Like, we didn't know what sex trafficking was. Nobody talked about sex trafficking until 2008.
And who would have thought we'd be at the confluence of one of the most trafficked areas in the country?
There's, we are situated very well for people who want to traffic people.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. So I think, Sacramento certainly has a lot of sex trafficking, and honestly, it's all over this country.
As you reflect on what the organization is today, and you go, okay, we've got all these programs. We'll have constituents listening, we'll have donors listening, volunteer opportunities listening to the program. Where would you say your greatest need is today?
We always need funding, so
yes.
Always money and in-kind things. People want to go to our website. We maintain a list of items that we need, and people can go on and order it directly from Amazon and have things shipped to us.
Wonderful.
Because when people donate things, it means we don't have to spend grant dollars on the things. We can hire more staff, and more of the money can go directly to serving clients. But, the biggest thing we need is for people to just engage and get involved and become educated about what domestic violence and sexual assault look like and how to respond and refer somebody, because somebody who's a victim. Everybody does.
And to your point on that, I think it's easy for us to assume, this is relegated to a different class of our community. It's not relegated to the people that I associate with, when in fact, maybe even as much as, in some cases, more so, to where people we would never expect, people we know and associate with, people in leadership positions have the same situations in their household that, people who are less fortunate.
Well, I think people get really wrapped around this concept of physical violence, and we talk about 6 different types of domestic violence, and they show up differently in different communities.
Can you state them?
Sure. There's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, which often has the longest lasting scars for people. And that can look lots of different ways.
You say it's not visible.
No, it's not visible. And it can be gaslighting somebody. It could be really isolating them, not letting them talk to their friends and family. In its extreme form, we call that spiritual abuse. So it could be not letting somebody do the things that fill them up, not letting them practice their religion, using religion against them to keep them under control. Financial abuse, most of the clients we see have some sort of financial abuse, whether it's being put on an allowance, having access to your own money, being forced to work, being told you can't work, having somebody ruin your credit, buying cars in your name, that kind of a thing, and technological abuse, which is the hardest thing for us to keep track of. So
that has to be a newer one.
It's pretty new. And, that's either posting things on social media or threatening to, tracking somebody with devices through their phone, all of those sorts of things. So, and then sexual abuse, which sometimes is confusing to people. And believe it or not, it was not a law in California until fairly recently that a husband could not sexually assault his wife. So, all of those things play out differently in every relationship, but certainly you could be a very wealthy person but not have access to your own money.
Right.
And we see that a lot. And oftentimes people don't think to come to Weave if they've got money because they'll go get their own counselor or, that sort of thing. But we serve a lot of folks that have money but don't have access to it through our legal program, especially if their partner has a lawyer. That's one of the times that we'll represent them in court for their divorce and child custody, because there's that imbalance of power if one person's all lawyered up and the other person has nobody.
Right.
And, you can have a lot of money and have no access to it.
Right. And so you really got these two things at play. You've got the fear of identification, the fear of awareness, and what if somebody knows, and all of that, which in many cases don't want anybody to know. And then the other side that you really provide, which I think is the blessing, the benefit, is the hope that, okay, there's somebody here for me. I can reach out. I don't have to be, sequestered or secluded as a result of what's happening in the household in any one of those situations, because I can see obviously multiple abuses in a bad situation.
Well, and both domestic violence and sexual assault are very isolating crimes. It's embarrassing. Usually with sexual assault, they were assaulted by somebody they knew.
Right.
And oftentimes there was alcohol used, as it is the number one date rape drug.
Yeah.
And so people don't remember what happened. They feel like maybe they consented when they didn't. So it can be really isolating and people can really crawl into themselves. So just having somebody say, we believe that this happened to you and there's help for you can be very powerful. And I would say to anybody listening, it's one of the best things you could do. If somebody discloses to you that they've been a victim of either sexual assault or domestic violence, just saying, I believe you, can really go far to somebody then opening up and reaching out and seeking help.
No, I'm sure, because there's so much, again, as you mentioned, embarrassment and denial and unwillingness to hear that somebody accepts what I'm about to say and then gives me an opportunity to share more.
Yep.
Wow, what a powerful, simple few words. I believe you.
Yep.
That it's real. Let's shift gears for just a minute, because you have a tremendously stressful job. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. What do you do to chill out and relax a bit?
I travel. I go on vacations. That always helps me clear my head. And I surround myself with people who fill me up and share my values that I want to eradicate these crimes and I want to make this world safe and fair for everybody in it. And I play games and hang out with my two pugs. And
whose names are?
Georgia O'Keeffe and Frida Kahlo. They're my little lady painter pugs. And family, hang out with my daughter who produced a granddaughter and is on her way to produce a son. So
isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep loved ones and good friends around you. And I laugh a lot. It's heavy, weighty work.
Yes.
And we need to find ways to have fun and still be lighthearted.
Well, we know laughter is the best medicine.
Absolutely.
If there's one thing that you'd like to leave the listeners with in the grand scheme of all that Weave does, so that they walk away, if they forget everything else that we talked about, there's just this one thing that if you walk away with this, we've gotten your attention to know we exist. What would that look like? What might it be?
I think that there are lots of options for somebody who has experienced domestic violence or sexual assault. And that we are very survivor driven. So it's whatever somebody needs at that moment. And to know how to refer somebody if you recognize that there's domestic violence or sexual assault going on. Just even to say, go to Weave, they've got something that will help you. You don't have to know the laundry list of all the services that we provide,
right,
but just to know that there's an array of solutions for them if they choose to avail themselves of them.
Mm-hmm. And I believe you.
And I believe you.
Can you give us the support line number?
Mm-hmm. It's 916-920-2952.
And if we want to go to the website?
It's weaveinc.org.
Okay. And we'll put the information there in the show notes as well, so that if anybody happens to forget it or doesn't catch it out of the audio part, it'll be in the show notes so you can click right on it and make a call if necessary.
And we're pretty Google friendly, so if you type in Weave Sacramento, we will pop up.
If you just type in Weave, you're showing up.
Yeah, we are.
Which is great, as opposed to a quilters organization or something else.
Or hair weaves. You
Yes.
might get some hair images.
I would imagine. Well, Beth, thank you so much. I think what you do is incredible, and I think the service you've been providing to the community for so many years is really second to none. It's the largest organization of its type, and I think so many people, once they know the organization's there, are so appreciative of it that, you know, we're glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me here and helping spread the word.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast series. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach us at info@multipointstrategies.com. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is a production of Multipoint Content Strategies and is recorded and edited by Hear Me Now Studio.